So again, welcome to the Road to Recovery webinar with Choose Recovery Services tonight. I'm Hali Roderick. And while we're waiting for a few more people, given a few more minutes to jump on, I'm going to share a couple of things that we may circle around to again at the end. But I'm going to put the link to all of our announcements that are happening at Choose Recovery Services in the chat. If you would like to learn about anything that's happening at Choose, this is a good link to check out. We have a link to all of our intensives. We're just about to have our final intensive of the year this week. So if you happen to be a woman in betrayal trauma, you have like one more day to register. We start on Tuesday in Utah. And then we should have our registration for our intensives in 2026 up live pretty soon. And then there's information about all of the resources we offer at Choose, which are pretty extensive. You can read about all of the groups that we run for both individuals seeking recovery and partners in healing. We have blogs, we have podcasts, we have lots of coaches. We do full disclosures. You can take some self-guided courses. So there's a lot of resources. If you're new to Choose Recovery Services, check out that announcement sheet. And then I'm going to share a personal, and it's not really personal, it's business, but it's something that I'm personally invested in. We are I'm hosting a men's brain and body healing summit with my husband and my daughter, who's a therapist, also works with Choose in Mesa, Arizona. We're doing a summit for men. It's a 4-day in-person event where we're going to connect scientific. You're going to get to experience some things like modalities that are physical healing to the body. So if you feel like you're doing groups and therapy and all the things and still find yourself running into roadblocks, it could be because you have some challenges in the physical aspect of trauma and addiction on your body. So we're addressing some of those from a whole body healing approach. So that's coming up the first weekend in November. It's in Mesa, Arizona, and you can find the link to that or I'm going to put the link to that in the chat, and we'll put it in the email as well. We would love to have you join us in that. I'm super excited. This has been something we've been passionate about for a long time, and finally doing an in-person event for men. And we plan to do an in-person event for women after the first of the year, and probably another one for men. So you can learn more about that if you would like, and would love to answer questions if you have any questions. So all of that business out of the way, Joseph, thank you for joining us tonight. Did you
Thank
want
you
to?
for having me, Hallie. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
So I'm excited for you all to hear from Joseph tonight. And if you haven't had a chance to get to know Joseph, you can read more about his bio, which will link that in the recording. But Joseph has been with our team at Choose Recovery Services, a little over a year now, Joseph?
Yeah, probably about a year and a half, somewhere around
Yeah.
there.
So been in the coaching world longer than that, but part of our team here at Choose for about that long. I've had the opportunity to work closely with Joseph a couple of times, and excited to have you join us tonight. So I will just throw your bio in the chat for anybody that wants to read more about you. But why don't you tell our audience a little bit more about you, Joseph, before we jump into tonight's topic?
Sure, yeah. So I'm a recovery coach, specialize in compulsive sexual behavior coaching, as well as partner betrayal trauma coaching. And I kind of specialize in something called intimacy anorexia, which is kind of a co-addiction to compulsive sexual acting out, and many times. And so, really love the work that I do, working with couples and individuals and couples who are working to heal from the problems that the compulsive sexual behavior has brought to their relationship. And so, love love what you were talking about, Holly, with that like whole person, even the physicality piece of what recovery is. I do believe true recovery takes a holistic person approach. And so that's what I love to get to do with Choose, and I hope we talk about some great stuff tonight.
Yeah. I know when I was looking at your topic, I was like, oh, this is perfect. Like this, what we're going to talk about tonight kind of goes hand in hand with the brain and body, the whole approach to healing and the science, like a scientific approach to recovery, which I think we have to. It's like a whole picture. We have to talk about the mental approach and the therapy approach to things. And I think if we don't address things from a scientific approach, or we don't think about the impact of trauma and addiction on our physical bodies, we're missing a big piece. And so we really have to come at this from a holistic and a whole body approach. And so that's a good lead into our topic tonight. Joseph, do you want to actually I'll let you introduce the topic tonight from your perspective, and then we'll jump in from there if that works.
Sure. Yeah, and before I do, I would just love to give everyone a full disclosure tonight that I am on one of the few Choose coaches that's on the East Coast. So it's 9 o'clock where I am right now, and that's normally very close to my bedtime. So if I stumble over my words, if I promise I won't fall asleep, but if I stumble over my words, that's my excuse tonight. So feel free to be very have a lot of questions. I'd love to have that sort of engagement to keep my mind working. Um, but I want to talk a little bit tonight about, and this can branch off into so many different kind of aspects, but treating your compulsive sexual behavior, and I'll label it in a certain way. I'll label it like an addiction. Treating, if there's a sexual addiction, treating that addiction like a scientist. And what I mean by treating it like a scientist is to, in a certain way, remove the stigma and the shame behind the behavior, because many times there is so much stigma and behavior around sexually acting out that is actually counterproductive for us as people that are in recovery, because when we act out and we feel shame about it, it reinforces that negative acting out cycle that just continues to move on and rotate, and you keep finding yourself back in the same place, in the same place, in the same place. And so not removing the responsibility of the reality that those behaviors are destructive to yourself and also to your partner. So not removing the responsibility that we have for that, but removing some of the shame and the stigma and treating it in a way where we're looking at data. So if you think of like what a scientist does, they come up with a hypothesis. And that hypothesis is if I do A, B, C, and D, I think the outcome is going to be this. And then they test that hypothesis. And sometimes that hypothesis proves right, but more often than not, the hypothesis actually is proven wrong. They say this is not the right hypothesis. Something in this ABCD did not add up, and therefore I did not get the result I was looking for. And in recovery, maybe that result is sobriety. Maybe that result is clear thinking. Maybe that result is empathy. Maybe that result is building a better connection and communication with your spouse. You can put a bunch of different things in that result place. But so many times with the clients that I see them get so discouraged, especially in the beginning of recovery, because they say, well, I tried this and this and nothing works. It's just, recovery is not possible for me. But when we go back and look at it, we say, okay, we have A and B. Now let's try to put this different thing in here. Let's try to put this different thing in here. Don't get discouraged. Don't get in shame. Let's try this out a different way. And so taking the shame out of it and replacing it with, I'm going to be a scientist, I'm going to read the data, and then I'm going to change my experiment going forward. I'm going to have a new hypothesis and see how that goes. I just feel like that is such a better way in recovery to think about it, to actually move you forward and propel you forward, rather than getting stuck in a victim mentality and a shame spiral that keeps you held back. I know I'm a person in recovery as well, have been for many years. And when I started treating my compulsive behavior like that was when I really started to see results. Um, so that's a kind of a opening to our topic. I'm happy, like if you guys are thinking about questions, feel free to start throwing those into the chat, asking, okay, how do you do that? How do you practically do that? But Hallie, I'll throw it back to you to see if you have any follow-ups to that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that explanation. And I think one of the things that I love about this the most is because, and you mentioned this right off the bat, but it kind of hits at the core of shame, which is one of the things that I think can keep individuals in an addictive pattern or in an addictive cycle is the shame piece. And so approaching this from that with, again, highlighting that the the impact is still, it's still important that we address the impact of the behaviors and the challenges. That doesn't like remove the accountability for that, but approaching your techniques and or your way, I don't know if technique is the right word, but changing your approach to the way you think about the challenges that you're having in controlling those behaviors and those thought processes, I think can move you into a place of empowerment rather than feeling like you're stuck or you're a victim to circumstances. So my brain was going to a lot of places. So let me just start here and we'll see where this goes. And then again, like you said, we'd love to hear the questions that our audience has so feel free to put those in the chat. But so for someone who is stuck or is feeling stuck in recovery or might be in that hopeless place of I don't think this is possible for me, where would you say they should start to try and plug in some of this scientific mindset? Like what kind of things can they look at if that's where they find themselves? How would they shift out of that into this more, I'm going to approach this from a different lens?
Yeah, so I've got several ideas about this, but maybe I'll start with just probably the most personal example and what was the most helpful for me when I was starting out my journey. And that is actually understanding the science between what is happening in the brain when it comes to sexual compulsive behavior. Um, for so long I thought I was broken and I thought something was wrong with me. And I had tried in various ways to stop behavior, but never anything that would bring about honesty or bring about accountability and talking to anybody about my issue. And so once I kind of realized that there was a brain science thing going on, there was a biological component, there was a neural pathway that had been formed in my mind through destructive patterns over the years. And when you put those patterns over and over and over again, by itself, it can form a biological connection where you are doing things that you don't actually want to do. But then when you actually pair that to psychological trauma, whether, big T, major trauma, or little t, like small traumas over the years of, different things, anytime you have a negative feeling that happens, you tend to learn to make yourself feel better by following that neural pathway down the path of acting out. And so for me, that, like, learning about that there was a legitimate brain thing going on, was the thing that kind of destigmatized the shame for me. And I realized, no, it's actually completely normal for me to be in the place that I am right now because of what happened to me and the choices I made because of what happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that took some of that shame away. It was really understanding my story, digging in deep to understand that I had things that I was medicating, and then a biological pattern to back that up.
Yeah. It makes me think of if you know who Dr. Daniel Amen is, he's a brain science guy and he does SPECT scans,
Mm-hmm.
which measure blood flow to the brain. And I was trying to find an image of it, but I can't find it right now. But he has one where he shows um, an image of a healthy brain
Mm-hmm.
where all the blood flow is going to the frontal lobe, or much of it, the majority of it is going to the frontal lobe, which is where our value-based decisions are made, our logical thinking is happening. And then he has one of the brain of someone with an addiction, and then there's another one with emotional trauma, and the blood flow is going to all these different parts of the brain, which in a normal brain, the blood flow, I mean, of course it's going there, but it's not going at the rate that it is when it's been impacted by trauma and addiction. And the blood flow to the frontal lobe is actually minimized. It's not going there as much as it is, and so as much as it should be in a healthy brain. And that's so validating to me. It applies for betrayal trauma as well as addictive behaviors. And so if you've ever done something or made a choice and go, oh my gosh, or said something and was like, what's happening? Like, that's not me. That's not who I am. It could be that your brain is offline and there is literal, like your blood flow and other things happening, that hormones change everything as well with traumatic things. And many of the men that I work with that are working through sexually compulsive behaviors have a history of trauma, either from childhood or previous life. And so it, a lot of this stems from earlier life experiences that then lead to these compulsive behaviors. So, okay, so I love that approach, just knowing that and approaching it from that way. So in real life application, how does this change your recovery work? Because so let's say there's someone maybe that's been trying things, on their own for a long time, and they're to a point where they know they have to do something different. How would approaching this change what you do on a day-to-day basis? Because we know that long-term recovery really, you can't just push hard for a few weeks or a few months and then stop the behaviors and have them go away. We know that addictive behaviors, compulsive behaviors take consistent long-term, like really lifestyle changes. So what does this look like in an everyday, like what would I do differently if I were approaching it from this perspective?
Yeah, so man, there are so many things. Thinking about that question, I think um, the first thing I would say is what you're doing right now is not working. And so you have to come to that realization that what's going on right now is not working and I have to make a change. I have to do, if I want to change, something has to change. In like 12 step materials, that's like step one. And it's realizing I'm powerless over this and my life has become unmanageable. That unmanageable word is the word I'm kind of focusing in on right now. It's like that realization that I can't keep doing what I'm doing the way I'm doing it right now, because what I've been doing is keeping me going back to the same thing over and over again. And so that kind of gives you the opportunity to take a step back and look at the entirety of your life and say, okay, what do I need to change? And everybody's story is a little bit different. But I think there are patterns to people that are going through compulsive sexual behaviors. One of them is, I feel that most of the men that I work with, and of course I'm genderizing here, but most of the men that I work with that are trying to recover from sexual compulsive behavior are fairly isolated. They don't have a community of people around them where they feel comfortable sharing their emotions, sharing their struggles, sharing their temptations, sharing their stories, learning to be empathetic with other people, learning to hear other people's stories. And so normally that's one of the first things that I ask men to kind of evaluate. What's your support system look like? Who are the people in your life that are asking you tough questions? Who are the people in your life that really know you for who you know yourself to be? Because you've been trying to hide that part of yourself. Is there anybody? And then we start to make the decision, okay, let's find those safe people that you can let yourself be known to. Um, sometimes that from the beginning can be a spouse or partner. Sometimes that's not the case. A lot of times I'm encouraging men to get in a group at this point. Choose has a lot of excellent groups, and that's teaching something, maybe a new skill that has never been there before, which is a vulnerability and a kind of um, a group of people that will cheer you on for your honesty and understand you in the midst of your struggle. And so community is one of those, kind of the first one that I ask men to look at, and is there anything there that you can improve on? Boundaries is another really helpful one, is evaluating those boundaries that are there. And the boundaries can be as general or as specific as you want them to be, but I tend to see that the boundaries that are the most specific are the most effective. Um, things like I I don't get on my phone after 9:30, or I don't bring my phone in the bathroom or the bedroom, or I do not get on a device unless it has some sort of content filtering or accountability software on it. And some men have never put any boundaries in place. They just try out of their own willpower to not do the things they want to do. And like getting to the point where your life is unmanageable, you make a decision to not do the same things in the same way that you've been doing them forever. Sometimes means that you need to make some sacrifices in the short term to have the long-term gains that you want to have. And so this setting up boundaries goes really kind of hand in hand with what we're talking about with the kind of scientific mindset, because you don't have to have a boundary in place unless it's actually working, unless it's like fulfilling what you think it's going to. So you can try out new boundaries. Okay, I don't think it works for me to have my phone in my bedroom after 9:30, because that's when I tend to doom scroll and get hooked on something, right? So I'm going to try for the next week to see if that helps me and see if that actually takes some of the temptation out of my life. And you evaluate it in 7 days and see if your hypothesis was right. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. And then you reevaluate and put a different boundary in. Like I said, it's not something to have shame about. It's something to just make constant, consistent tweaks and changes to. So boundaries is a helpful one. So
Can I just can I add something right there where my brain's going while I'm listening to you talk, is that sometimes what tends to happen is we get in this rigid mindset of like I have to do certain, or we actually maybe want a rigid, like give me a 10-step process that is going to work every single time and I'll do it. Kind of like a tell me what to do and I'll do it. And with this approach, what I'm hearing you saying is that it's not, maybe there are some generalized things that are going to work for the majority of people. And I think boundaries is one of them. It makes me think of the circle behaviors, like the inner, middle, and outer circle behaviors. We have to know what those are, but they might be different for everybody. And so having this approach where I'm going to experiment with this, see if it helps, step back and reevaluate and make some tweaks and adjustments and then move on. So sometimes we get stuck in this rigid mindset and we go, well, I tried that, it didn't work. So that's not for me.
yeah,
But maybe we have to just look at what we're doing and going, okay, well, that part of it didn't work. And maybe it's because I need to add this, or maybe I need to change this, or I need to do it this way. So it just made me think of that rigid mindset that sometimes, or that black and white thinking of it either works or it doesn't work. and kind of stepping out of that and being willing to make tweaks and adjustments. This is where everybody's story is so unique that having some professional guidance or somebody like accountability to help you see through your blind spots and look past some of the things that maybe have been getting that you've been getting hung up on can be so important. So I second your suggestion on groups. I don't know that there's anything better to remove shame than to get in a group with men. I have some involvement with the men's groups at Choose. I run the Help Her Heal group, and then I sub in some of the Beyond the Facade groups. I'm getting ready to start a phase 2 Beyond the Facade group here shortly. And there is something really powerful in those that happens in those men's groups when they come and they have other people who are working towards similar goals, and their stories are never exactly the same, but the understanding and just having a place where they can talk about the difficult things that maybe they can't talk about in work, or maybe their families don't know about it, or maybe even their closest buddies don't get it. But having that safe place where they can talk about it with other guys who are working towards similar things is invaluable, in my opinion. So hopefully if you're struggling with that, that's something that you will consider looking at is, okay, is this something that maybe this is the next step I need to take, is getting myself in a community that can support me.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard men say after being able to like actually talk about the real things in their life, like they almost instantly feel a relief of the weight that they've been carrying. It's like it just feels so good. Doesn't mean it's solved, but it just feels good to finally let somebody see into their struggles.
Yeah, in the groups I run, my consistent feedback from the men who are in it who were very anxious about coming and who had never done anything like that before is, wow, I had actually no idea what I was getting into, but I'm so glad that I came, and I can see that this is going to be valuable for me. I had no idea I needed this, but I definitely did.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then going back to just like kind of that um rigidity mindset that you were talking about, Hallie, it's the people that I see really excel in recovery from the beginning um are the ones that are not saying, here, put a plan in front of me, I'm going to follow this plan. It's they're the people who come back and they say, all right, here's what I've come out up with, here are the ways that I think are I look at my life and I see, here's what I need. And they've been creative and they've done brainstorming, and they bring it and then they get feedback on it. And so they tend to be the ones who really excel from the beginning. And others who have that rigid mindset kind of have to learn that, no, I've got to make this my own. So I just validate you bringing that up there.
So let's address this question that just came in while we're kind of on this topic. What's the difference between Beyond the Facade group, or the Beyond the Facade groups, phase 1 and phase 2? Do you want to talk about that, Joseph, or do you want me to tackle that one?
You're probably better to do that, Allie. Yeah.
Okay. So phase 1 is for men who are in the really trying to find sobriety, where they're in this phase where Joseph and I are talking tonight, like they're still trying to master their ability to stay out of the compulsive behaviors. They need these skills, they need this accountability, and so they're not really, they're either just starting out or they've not necessarily starting out but haven't found success before. And so phase 1 is for those men, and phase 2 is for men who have some mastery around it and have I don't know if we actually have a like a designated length of time you have to have sobriety where there's been no acting out. But phase 2 is where we go deeper and we work on the emotional awareness and developing more of the emotional skills to really step into true recovery. So phase 1 is more about finding sobriety and being able to stay there, and recovery. And phase 2 is about moving more into a deeper recovery mindset. And then Help Her Heal comes after that. We're kind of in a transition period where we're going to do a phase 2, and then you can go into Help Her Heal. You can actually right now join Help Her Heal at any time. But Help Her Heal has some crossover between Beyond the Facade and Help Her Heal because it's Help Her Heal gives you the idea that what can I do to help my wife heal, which is true, but what you can do to help your wife heal is to do your work. And so there's some crossover there. I do approach it from a place of the lens of a betrayed partner. So I try to always bring in that like relational piece to phase two. So there's some crossover between Help Her Heal and Beyond the Facade phase two. Phase two is specifically just still individual recovery. Help Her Heal is recovery with the lens of relational, like the relational piece on it. And when I open my phase two group, I can't say that I'm going to be able to keep that lens out because it's just the way I approach recovery. So it might be on the facade phase two group when we get that up and running here shortly is, I mean, it's just the way I see recovery. So it will have probably have that lens on it as well. So hopefully that answers that question. Both are needed. So if you're just starting out or you're feeling stuck, phase one is the Beyond the Facade phase one is the place to start. And if you feel like you have some mastery under it and you're ready to start doing some of the deeper work, phase two is the place to be. And really you can do an intake with one of our male intakes coordinators and they can help you determine where the right place to start is. And as I'm saying that out loud, I was thinking of this while you were talking, that we're talking about this from the man being the individual seeking recovery and the female being the betrayed partner. I just want to acknowledge that that's not always the case. That is the majority of the clients that we see, but I know that's not always the case. It can be flip-flopped. It can be the other way. And so if that is your experience and you're here, I'm sorry that we're speaking to it from this lens. We don't mean to separate that out, but that's just the majority of our audience. So if you are on the opposite, where the wife or the woman is the individual seeking recovery and the husband or the man is the betrayed partner, then we would encourage you to reach out to us to get some individualized support because that definitely it does happen more often than we think. Okay, Joseph. So let's see if we keep going. So we've talked about um, getting in the group and moving out of isolation, having your own personal boundaries. What would you say about the word I guess that comes to my mind is self-care? I don't know if that's the word that really resonates with men, but like we have to look at how we take care of our mental, emotional, physical, spiritual needs in
Mhm.
order to really move into a place of recovery where we step out of those compulsive behaviors. So how would you say we approach that part of recovery from this scientific approach that we're talking about tonight?
Yeah. So actually, that's amazing that you brought that up because that was going to be my next talk, like next
Okay,
focus
good.
was
We're on the
just,
same page.
yeah, was just, you know, what does it look like to live a healthy life? Um, and self-care is a part of that, right? And I think, like I think men, when we think of self-care, you think of like, you think of, I don't know, I think of it in a very feminine way, right? Like I think of, oh, that means like you've just got to, take a bubble bath and get your nails done or go get a pedicure or something. And that's not something, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's
Like,
why I said I don't know if
yeah,
self-care resonates. And actually, for betrayed partners, just so you know, we kind of take that lens out too. Like the world wants to give you that's the idea of
yeah,
self-care, but I'm with you. It's so much more than massages and pedicures and taking.
yeah. Those things can be good, but
Yeah.
sometimes self-care is doing things that you don't want to do that are good for you.
Yes.
And for a man in recovery, and anyone in recovery, some of those things are healthy eating, um, eating clean, cutting out sugar, especially if you have like things like ADHD or if you have some other, mood disorder issues that can really play um, into your recovery. And there is a lot of studies to show that there are a lot of ADHD people with compulsive behavior across the spectrum of what those are, but it is hard um, when you have ADHD to kind of pay attention to the compulsive disorders and make better decisions. But healthy eating in those cases is really, really like cutting out sugar is really, really helpful. Um, Exercise, extremely helpful. And what type of exercise? I mean, moving your body in any way, and you might be the type of person that does not like heavy weightlifting, but weightlifting can be great, even a couple of times a week. But taking a 30-minute walk, can be extremely helpful. So moving your body. There's a book out right now by Jennifer Heiss called "Move the Body, Heal the Mind."
Mm.
Really, really good information in there about how you can heal your mind with exercise. Um, and so tracking things like this seems too simple, I think, sometimes for people in recovery. But like tracking your sleep, making sure you're getting enough sleep at night. Um, you know, Keeping tabs on what, like, in just in in your calendar at the end of every day, write like a thumbs up or a thumbs down on your mood every day, for like, and just kind of track that over a week, over a month, and see, okay, when do I see myself actually, like, is it the weekends when I'm all thumbs down? Like, okay, I know I need to have another plan. I need something for the weekend. Something isn't going right on the weekends, or is it during the week when you're at work that you're all thumbs down? Okay, what is this saying about my life right now that I'm not happy when I'm on the days that I'm working? Um, uh, you know, Tracking your isolation level, kind of just about your self-care. For some people, it's like involving a spiritual practice, if that's part of your background, and leaning into that as part of your recovery can be maybe the missing piece of what's going on in helping you feel healthy in your life. And looking at your screen use, your device use. I know for a lot of men that I talk to, there might be almost an internet addiction, or like, and for some people it's a gaming addiction. Like, there might be some things, just some overall escape patterns that are keeping you trapped in an unhealthy mindset when it comes to your recovery overall. So maybe you put away the compulsive sexual behavior, but you're having trouble just moving forward emotionally because you're still escaping in different ways. And then I think one of the best things you can do for healthy self-care is just work on emotional awareness. In general, every day, identify a couple of feelings. And a lot of people that I talked to kind of earlier on, they're like, I don't even know how to do that. I don't know how I feel, and when that's the case, what I do is I give people a list of feelings. It's got like 200 feelings. And I say, I don't care how you actually feel today. I just want you to randomly pick one. And if it says calm, I want you to journal over the next 10 days, pick two feelings, you randomly pick one, and then you'll journal, okay, I feel calm when this, like in my life, when do I feel calm? And then maybe when I was a kid, when did I feel calm? When are the times that I felt calm? And we're trying to just unlock some of these emotions that are buried deep down inside there and create kind of a file cabinet where you can put memories to that feeling. And the more you do that, the more emotionally aware you will become, the more emotionally fit you will become. And then the easier it will be to start identifying where you actually are, in the moment today. And so those are all kind of, I'm sure there are more, Hallie, that you could chime in with, but those are all really kind of practical things you can do to work on your self-care, your healthy lifestyle.
Yeah. It lines up really well with what we do that we're going to do at our Brain Health Summit, and that we use in our brain health protocols with my husband's office. Is we have an acronym. It's called BEDDSSS, and it stands for brain training, exercise, diet, dental, stress, sleep, and supplements. So all of those things that we just talked about. There's sometimes we don't know, like how our dental work. If you have root canals or you still have silver fillings in your teeth, sometimes those get infected, and that's like right next to your brain. So if you have infection there and you don't even know about it because you've had a root canal, that can be impacting your brain and how the inflammation that you might have there. And so there's a lot of things, but there's an app as you're talking. And by the way, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat because Joseph and I could probably chat all night, but we'd love to get to your questions if you have any. Um, but there's an app some of the guys that I work with use, and it's called How We Feel. How We Feel? Yeah, I think it's called How We Feel. And you can set an alarm and it will prompt you to check in with yourself and how you're feeling in any particular moment. And it actually gives you like a feelings map and you can map it out and then go back and look at trends. And this, I don't even think this is just for guys because I actually only really had emotional awareness when I started working on my own recovery as well, because I didn't have a lot of that awareness. And so when somebody introduced me to an emotions wheel, which I had heard about, but it like opened up a whole new language of things. So I could identify with angry, happy, sad, but I didn't know anything underneath it. And so just having the language of like what's underneath angry. Oh, I'm angry because I feel let down and humiliated. Of course I feel angry. So using an app like How We Feel or getting an emotion wheel sometimes can just open up some new language and understanding for you. So um, I love that you touched on that. The other thing that's coming up for me as we're talking about all these like self-care things is addressing the impact on our nervous system. The nervous system is really kind of driven by our subconscious mind. And if you get activated by something, and you're not even paying attention. Like a lot of times we just blow right by the signals our body's giving us because we don't know what they are. We can't even acknowledge that our body is giving us alarms, like our body's giving alarms off. And so I like to pair that. How am I feeling and where do I notice it in my body? To like make that emotional and physical connection. But there's a lot of things that you can do to reset your nervous system and that you don't really have to pay anybody to do it. You can do a lot of this stuff on your own. I think some of the best things that you can do is just intentionally and purposefully find time to. I like meditation. I think if you have a chattery mind, a guided meditation is a great thing to do because it gives you something to bring your focus back to when your mind wanders. But it also helps you intentionally connect to your breath and to your body and purposefully be still. Um, you can do things like breath work. I'm a breath work facilitator. I highly recommend breath work. If you come to one of our intensives, you'll probably get to experience breath work with us. Um, Find somebody locally that you can do some breath work. And I'm not talking just guided meditation, but like breath work that helps you move some of that stored trauma and emotion through your body. Um, Cold plunging can be really good. It will reset the allostatic load. So if we are constantly carrying a whole bunch of stress in our bodies, but we're never resetting our nervous system, our window of tolerance becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. And that's when we don't have really any space between getting triggered by something and making a choice of how we're going to respond to it. So we want to expand our window of tolerance so we have more space between the stimulus and the response. So it's an actual logical choice and not just an automatic reaction. So addressing the nervous system and resetting our nervous system on a regular basis. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. I could spend all night talking about that. We're going to do some of that at our men's summit too. So you're going to get some of that. I also think while we're on this topic, I'll just plug this with our men's summit coming up. You have the option to do some actual lab work and look at what's actually happening in your body as far as your vitamins and nutrient levels and hormone levels. And sometimes those are off. And if you don't even know it, just doing the things, maybe there's a supplement or a medication that you might need, or a self-care habit that you could put in place that would help you, or a diet change or something that you could could put into place that helps your physical body react better and respond in a more optimal way, then you're going to put yourself in a better place to be able to do the work of recovery that you're working so hard to do. So, my husband always likes to use this analogy that if you're trying to run a marathon and you have a torn ACL, you're not going to get very far until you repair the ACL. And that's like trying to do recovery without addressing the impacts of the physical impacts on your body from addiction and trauma. So let me just read this comment. Um, I would thank you for this topic. I'm going to just read it out loud for our listeners. Okay, so thank you for this topic. I was so numb as the betrayed partner that I legit had no idea how to make myself happy. The only thing I knew to do was take a bath. So I got in the bath begrudgingly a lot. Eventually, I started meditating in the bath. I love it. We call that stacking therapies. A huge aha moment for me was when I was taught that eating and sleeping and learning about betrayal, trauma, and what is happening to you is a form of self-love. Yes. Can you just mention the different ways to reset your nervous system? Yeah, there are so many ways to reset your nervous system, but the couple that I just mentioned, cold plunge is probably one of the fastest ones because it literally shocks your system. And women, this works for us too. We just don't need the water as cold as men, and maybe don't need to do it as often. Kind of depends on who you listen to. But cold plunge is one of the I hate it every single time I get in it. It's not something I look forward to doing, but I do love the way I feel when I get out of a cold plunge. Because it literally kind of shocks your system back into baseline again. I guess that's not the word I want to use, but it shocks your system back into like baseline. So then you're starting from a baseline grounded level in your allostatic load. And then as you have more stress and more stress and more stress, then you need to reset it again. Breath work is another one. Breath work is where we are purposefully activating your system so that you can access what I call a higher level of consciousness. And then you can actually kind of get to some of that subconscious stuff. I think breath work, I describe it as one of the best ways to process trauma and stored emotions without actually having to verbalize it. So if you have a hard time wanting to talk about it, find a good breathwork practitioner that can help you do that. It's not the end all be all, but it's one modality. I think personally, the guided meditation or daily mindfulness in a lot of different ways is free. You can do it anytime, any place, anywhere. So that's one of the best ones. There are things like you can do tapping. There are like physical things you can do. If you get on TikTok or Instagram and search reset your nervous system, you'll have a whole bunch of things that you can do. And to me, the best way to address the nervous system is on a consistent basis, every day, consistently, will help you over the long run be able to stay at a more grounded and neutral place. You can't just do it once and then have it be you can't just reset your nervous system once and then expect it to stay there as you go back out into your stressful life. It's something that we have to continually do. Bring ourselves back to baseline, bring ourselves back to baseline, reset our nervous system. I like as far as there's a question, is there a meditation app I like? I like Insight Timer. There's a paid version and a free version, but I don't pay for meditation apps because there's a lot of free meditation resources out there. You can go to YouTube and find a whole bunch of them, but I like Insight Timer because they have a lot of free options, and you can search meditation for anger, meditation for fear, meditation for focus, meditation for whatever, and it'll give you a lot of options. Some are 5 minutes, some are 15 minutes. So that's my favorite one. Do you meditate, Joseph? Do you have any?
I do. I don't remember the name of I have a podcast that I listen to, but
Okay.
I'm always trying to find a mindfulness meditation practice because there is some meditation stuff out there that is, I don't think quite as helpful, like, because it's more about like emptying your thoughts, and
Yeah.
mindfulness meditation is about actually focusing your thoughts and getting really present in your body, and maybe the way you feel. Um,
Mhm.
And so, yeah, anything to do with mindfulness meditation. There's a bunch of good podcasts out there. If you just like I'm a podcaster, so I just type that into the
Yeah.
podcast app and find it.
My
And
one of
something
my
like that.
goals
Go
is to
ahead.
one of my goals is to create a meditation app for betrayed partners and another one for individuals seeking recovery. So that's on my to-do list.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But one of the somatic things that I find the most helpful is progressive muscle relaxation.
Mm.
Um, and that's where you kind of start from toe and you work your way up to your head and you tighten your muscles, like you start in your toes and you tighten them for about 10-15 seconds and then you release them. And then you just kind of do that in your muscles all the way up your body and you kind of notice that sensation and then release them. That one is really has really been useful to me. I love it because I can do it while I'm literally sitting. I can be in a meeting with somebody and doing that at my desk and nobody even knows. I don't have to be listening to anything or, it's I can be very mindful in that moment in my body while whatever is going on.
I do that a similar thing when I can't sleep at night. I'll do that muscle tightness and body kind of a body scan type of a thing. The comment in the chat, comments about consistently bringing yourself back to baseline sound like the description of the purpose of meditation. Simply noticing and then bringing yourself back to what you're focusing on. Is this correct understanding? Yes, I actually think about meditation as like going to the gym for your brain in a sense. Because to me, I have the biggest monkey mind. I can't quiet. I don't even know what that it would be like to quiet my mind, but I do know what it means to refocus my mind and to come back to I do this. I'm like, okay, I'm coming back to my breath and my what's going on in my whatever I'm listening to. So my mind will wander and then I notice it and I bring it back. And I stay as long as I can and then when it wanders again, I notice it and I bring it back. And so to me, it's also not about quieting my mind, even though I would love that, but it's more about training my brain to think about and focus what I want it to think about and focus when I want it to. Because you also think about that in relation to responding to triggers. If I don't have any control over where my mind goes when I'm activated, I'm automatically going down that rabbit hole quickly. And so if I'm activated, this is why I love it for this. If I'm triggered by something, whether I'm a guy or an individual seeking recovery or I'm a betrayed partner, if I get activated by something and I have no control over where my thought goes next, not a very empowered place to be able to change patterns. So I need it. I think it's one of the best ways to start creating that space between stimulus and the response is to be going, okay, there I'm noticing that activation. Again, the body awareness is helpful there too. I'm noticing that my brain is going here, and I'm going to bring myself back to what is actually happening right now in this moment. So it's to me, it's also about activating mindfulness is about activating your five senses, getting out of my head and into my body. So what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I smelling? What am I hearing? What am I seeing? Getting into those five senses. I think I said thinking in there, but I didn't mean thinking. The five senses will get you out of your thinking brain and into your body, which is really where we want to be. We want to find safety. We want to find trust within our body and not with our thoughts that sometimes lead us down rabbit holes. Um, Jeff Warren does a 30-day learn to meditate. That's amazing. He gives you a bunch of different things to try. He also has an ADHD and a meditation. Awesome. Thank you for that resource. Can you drop some podcasts that you would recommend for phase one candidates? The first one that I think of, Joseph, you might be a better resource for this, but the first one I think of is Luke's Beyond the Facade. That's for individuals seeking recovery, and he has a ton of great episodes on there. What other ones, Joseph, do you know of?
Um, Luke's is by far the best one that I know of that's out there. There are some other ones that I think there's one called Castimonia that's pretty good, and it kind of follows a 12-step model style. So it's a lot of that language, but it's a lot of like stories and testimonies, and so that can be really encouraging for you when you're in early recovery. Kind of a drawing a blank actually at the moment though on any other good ones. So.
Yeah, I'll maybe reach out to some of our other male coaches before we send out this email and see if they have any other good recommendations. But I think that's the reason why Luke started his Beyond the Facade, because there's a lack of good resources or the podcasts at least for individuals seeking recovery. I'm sure they're out there. So I'll see if I can find some other and put them in the email that comes. But that's a good question. I would like to know that too. I'm just also favor the Beyond the Facade because I know and trust Luke. So that's the one I always turn people to. So if you haven't checked out that one, it's in our announcement sheet up there, and then you can search Beyond the Facade. Okay, we're about to run out of time. So Joseph, let me give you the floor to any final words. Are you okay if I share, I'm sure you probably are, but the blog that you wrote on this topic in
Sure.
our chat?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And then I'll make sure we put this link in the email that goes out to. But Joseph wrote a blog post about this topic we've been talking about, approaching um, from a scientific mindset. So let me give you the final say. Anything else you'd like to add, Joseph, for our listeners?
Yeah, so maybe just end with a little bit of hope. Hallie, you mentioned those brain scans earlier from Dr. Amen.
Hmm.
And when you think, what's wrong with my brain because I have this thing going on, it can actually be pretty discouraging. But in Dr. Amen's work, he puts people on a pretty mild regimen of like cognitive behavioral therapy work mixed with healthy lifestyle choices. And then he brings them back in after a period of time and he rescans their brain and they have a completely different
Yep.
brain at that point. And so recovery is transformational. It's not an outward thing that you're just putting on this like new sheen to the old person you used to be. Like if you really dive into recovery and do the work that is necessary for you to have transformation, you can transform. You can be a new person. Your brain will look different, and um and people around you will not see you as the same person that you used to be. And I know it's so hard, like in early recovery. I know I didn't believe that change was possible, and I thought I was just doing the steps necessary kind of to just make it through. And over time, little by little, step by step, transformation happened, and it's still happening, because recovery is a journey of self-awareness. And if you are the healthier you get, the more you realize you need to be more self-aware, and you just keep um that train moving down the track, and there's never a day where you don't think you can do something better.
Yeah.
So I hope that's some hope for everybody.
Yeah, I love that. I appreciate that so much. I think that's true for both spouses, that recovery is not a destination. It's like and it's not linear and it's not the same for every person. And the more healing that we get, the more self-aware that we get, then we actually want more. We want to continue to improve and live at our optimal levels. So I love this conversation we've had tonight, Joseph. This is We didn't plan this, but your topic tonight was perfectly aligned with our upcoming men's summit that we have, because everything we talked about tonight is something we're going to try and give the participants that come a head start on the physical healing and looking at some of these um, physical impacts of trauma and addiction on the body. So I'll throw that link in there again, and we'll put it in the email that comes out. But we'd love to have you come join us for a few days in Arizona and tackle some of this. So I appreciate your wisdom and your insight, Joseph. We appreciate everybody being here tonight. Again, like I mentioned at the beginning, we'll send the recording out this week, probably tomorrow or Tuesday, in an email, and you'll get that if you want to listen to it again. And I'll try and include some of these links that we've shared tonight in the email as well. So if there's any way that we can support you, feel free to reach out to us at Choose Recovery Services, or you can do email info@chooserecoveryservices.com, or you can find Joseph and our contact information on our team website or our team bio pages. We are so happy to support you and point you in the right direction any way that we possibly can. So, Joseph, as always, thank you for being with me tonight, and it was fun to chat with you. Thank you all for being here, and we will see you next month. Have a good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.